Why do we sit here being silent, watching our leaders turn into tyrants? Have they forgotten which side they're fighting for? Checks and balances set aside and rule of laws, youth and ours, and Constitution openly ignored. Man, I'm not okay. Think we are being played. Is it time for right and left to join a greater cause? Man, I'm not okay. The rich claim to be victimized just to attack the marginalized. Is 1% really worth more than all the sick and poor? Always preaching about fellowship while planning their dictatorship. Now we've seen how all of this plays out before. Man, I'm not okay. Think we are being played. Time for you and I to join our country's call. Man, I'm not okay. Ever wonder all the mystery? Why they whitewash our history? Keep dividing is their plan. All in all, such a scam. Algorithm very sly, only used to spread the lies. Politicians know well, hate is simple to upsell. Man, I'm not okay. Think we are being played. Time for you and I to join our country's call.
We are not okay. America is not okay, and we all know that. Former Congressman Joe Walsh, this is The Social Contract with Joe Walsh. Let's figure out how to get okay together. Thank you for joining us. That voice belongs to Ellie Leonard. She has quickly become one of my favorite people on this crazy platform that I still don't understand.
Yeah, I don't either.
As you come in, hit the red hearts. And I'll say this a few times. If you're not yet subscribing to this young mother, doggone it, get off your butt and subscribe to her because she's doing really cool, interesting stuff.
Thank you.
Ellie, let's give everybody listening just a brief history before we get into something.
Sure.
Every day's so crazy, and you got your family, and the country's in the midst of a revolution. So I forget a lot of shit. But you and I reached out to each other a few weeks ago. How did we connect?
I don't remember. Well, okay, I do remember. I had reached out to you because I said something like, I feel like we're a little bit of like a kindred spirits. Like we might have come from like the same place. And it's funny because you then sent me your phone number and then I texted you. And then it wasn't till we talked recently that I realized that I'd left the number off the end of your phone number and that I had never texted you.
You
and I was like, oh, yes. And so, yeah, because I just feel like background wise and where I come from is probably very similar. Like I never worked in politics, but just like growing up in a very conservative house and just, like I have a very, I lived in Seattle. I went to Mars Hill Church, which is a wild and wacky story that I will probably write about at some point.
Yeah.
But just how far I've come. I have a trans family member, and that has taught me a lot about being open-minded and learning what being an ally and being supportive looks like, how much education I had to do on my own heart and in my own life. And I've made a lot of changes and strides over a long period of time. But I just think, every once in a while when we come to this wild world of the Trump administration, you run into people where you're just like, oh, you weren't always a liberal Democrat. Oh, we kind of come from the same place. Oh, we have something to talk about. And I just felt that about you. So I was like, I got to talk to him.
Ellie, I remember that. I'm glad you said that. And you and I we are like brother and sister because you come from a kind of a very conservative church environment, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And you were able to then do your thing. I come from the bowels of the MAGA Tea Party movement. And I was able to open my eyes and open my heart and mind and get out of that.
Right.
And so you and I do share that because, You say you're new to politics. By the way, you've got to follow everybody as you come in. You got to follow Ellie because we're going to get into the topic
Yeah.
initially that I know everybody wants to talk about. But it's so rare in my world of politics. It's always been rare to see people stand up in the public square and say, I fucked up. I made a mistake. I've changed and really own that. And I've had to
Yeah.
do that a lot. And you don't see a lot of people do that.
I
Sadly.
think that's really like the main thing that holds people back is pride. I think there's a lot of people who are still standing behind Trump who probably just think the same way you do.
Yeah.
But they're really scared to say that. But also I think, there's the good part of having come from that kind of a background is so many, 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 many of my family and friends are still very deep in it. And I can still be their friend and I can still be their family and I can still love them very much. And I'm not, I can know where they're coming from, even though I highly, highly disagree with them. I know where they're coming from and I know where their hearts are and I know how much they don't understand. And especially like I came here, I live on the East Coast now, but like I came from Montana. And when you talk about like the immigration issues, like we went to an all white school in an all white county and an all white, like they're not actually dealing with those issues. And so they're hearing about them from afar and they're hearing about things through a filter. And it's not an excuse, but I think I'm just able to talk to people maybe who are still in that vein.
Yes.
Human to human. And I think that's
and
helpful.
Ellie, I love that you do that. And again, to me, that gives people like you and I a real cool little perspective. We don't come from the world of far left progressives trying to convince our MAGA brother, or we come from you. I mean, and you're right. So I, the Catholic boy I am, the rest of my life, it's my penance. I'm going to try to always engage with my MAGA former friends and supporters and try to speak truth to them and see if I can open some minds.
Right. And and you have to do things that are intentional. You can't just say like, now I support you. I'm going to stand over here and now I support you. Something that I really struggled with talking about kind of the trans conversation was just educating myself and learning how to educate myself and not require other people to educate me. And so one thing we actually started doing is I worked for some filmmakers who actually did the Mayor Pete movie. And I worked for them on a few different films way, way back. And I said, my hometown has this magnificent trans convention that's been there since 1990. Randomly, it's a small red logging town. And they have a trans convention. And I said, why don't we make a movie about that? And so now I'm like meeting people and talking to people and interviewing people. And it's just like, okay, this whole world exists that I was blind to. And it was so easy to step into and just be like immediate friends with good people. And that's all it took.
That's so cool. Ellie Leonard, by the way, she's the Panicked Writer on Substack. Follow her, subscribe to her. We'll get into some of the other stuff. A wonderful, in fact, your background is fiction writing. But let's get into the topic that kind of, as you and I were getting to know each other, this other topic broke. Epstein, Trump, and then Michael Cohen. By the way, everybody, Ellie, what would you say, Ellie? Was it sometime early in 25 you began to write about Epstein and the whole thing?
At the end of July. Like I didn't, I knew about it, but I just really, I was just kind of wandering around Substack. I had gone there because I had a book on submission with a literary agent, and it just was doing nothing. It kind of died on submission. So it did not get published. And a friend of mine is a really good writer, and she said, well, why don't you go to Substack and just hang out and write for fun and just write for your heart? And so I started doing that, and I was visiting my parents, and my mother is a little bit on the conservative side. And I was a little bit like, I need an outlet. I need to be a brat. I need to rebel in some way. So I'd put my kids to bed at night and I was going to go write. And they kept talking about Epstein and his interactions with Trump. And I am a very logical, feet on the ground kind of a person. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I need data and stats. And so I thought, I'm going to go out and I'm going to figure out all the, actual documented interactions between Trump and Epstein, and I'm just going to write them down in chronological order. And I did. And then I was like, oh, let's publish that. And it just kind of went nuts. And I thought, wow,
Yeah.
people are really interested in this.
Yeah.
And then I just started digging into some of the pieces of the Epstein story that are not the breaking news, like some of the
Yes.
Dalton School stuff or some of the sweetheart deal stuff, and just looking at
Yep.
kind of the info behind it. And that's, I guess, how it's got started.
And so again, everybody, Ellie is one of your go-tos on this platform when it comes to some really interesting aspects of the whole Epstein thing, scandal. And I'll start here, Ellie, then I'm going to turn it over to you. Everybody who's listening, I put out a statement about 3 hours ago. I think it was one sentence. And all I said was, I am ending my business relationship with Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen and I will no longer do our weekly live. And this was a topic that Ellie and I have discussed a few times in this past week. And Ellie, I don't know how you'd summarize it, and maybe I'm a couple days late in putting out that statement. The whole thing kind of confused me. Michael Cohen weirdly on last week on Friday, put out a post that he felt coerced by
Yeah.
Letitia James and Alvin Bragg, those investigations into Trump. For the life of me, I still don't know why now he put that out. It just
Yeah.
raised troubling questions that I had to think about. And then I had to think about, well, okay, Michael Cohen, how much really does he know of Epstein and Trump? I don't know, but I worry. That's a very broad brush. But at this point, I can no longer do a live
Yeah.
with him. It's too much is troubling. But when it comes, Ellie, to Michael Cohen and the whole Epstein Trump thing,
Mhm.
and what, because you and Tara Palmieri and Lev kind of broke this Cohen
Yeah.
story last week. Update kind of what happened, what transpired.
Okay. So it kind of goes back a little bit further than that. We had been doing a panel on December 18th when Trump did his really fast and furious, nothing burger speech
Yeah.
right before Christmas. And they had invited me, and I was like running home from basketball practice. And I was at the tail end, and I jumped on, and there was Michael Cohen. And I'd never met Michael Cohen before. And I thought, okay, all right, we can do this. And we were just sort of discussing the nothingness that came out of that speech. And it just felt like we were winding down and we're all about to log off and go to bed.
Yeah.
And then Zev asked a really benign question. Who was
on, Ellie? Who was on the panel?
Oh, okay. Okay. So it was me, it was Michael Cohen, it was Zev Shalev, it was Lev Parnas. And I think that was everybody. Wajahat Heli had just gotten off. And then Nick Paro got on after I got off. No, Nick Paro was on with me. He was actually on with me.
So Zev asks a question.
He asked a very benign question that's just relating to the Epstein files. And Michael Cohen kind of blew his top. And out of nowhere, just totally unexpected. I don't think Zev expected that. He was certainly not being confrontational. And it became a very heated argument all of a sudden. Wow. And I've gotten a lot of feedback about my my body language during that conversation, which I didn't realize.
What was your body language?
And so then that ended, and there was kind of a back and forth between Lev and Michael Cohen, because they have, they've got some background together that overlaps, obviously. And then Michael Cohen had said some pretty nasty things about Zev, about choking or so. I don't remember what it was, but it was just not nice.
Yep.
And then it kind of like we moved on. I felt like we moved on. I felt like it wasn't really my fight. I was just happened to be there. And then I had been taking my Substackers that follow me. I've been talking to them about like crowdsourcing how to look through the Epstein files, because I don't come at this with like a journalism degree. I don't come at this with a legal mind. I'm really as qualified as the next person. And so I said, if we have more people looking through these, then we're more likely to find those clues. So let's all look together. And so I put it in a Dropbox, and I've just been giving people the link to my Dropbox, and everybody's digging. And people bring me stuff, and they bring me pretty interesting little nuggets. But one Substacker who wanted to remain anonymous came to me and said, I found this email about Michael Cohen. And it was an email from, I believe, his lawyers. And it was about maybe 12 days after Epstein had been arrested. So I think it was July 19th, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
And then he and Michael Cohen was in prison at this time. And he was talking about he wasn't talking, they were talking about him talking about something called a Rule 35,
Right.
which is basically if I give you information that is of
Yeah.
substance, you will reduce my sentence.
Bingo.
And they said that the information he had was the information he heard from Donald Trump about Jeffrey Epstein. So things that
Mm-hmm.
Donald Trump knew about Jeffrey Epstein. So I looked at this and I thought, that's interesting. And then I did what I always do and I passed it off to Zev because I think he's smarter than me. And I
Yeah.
said, here you go. And then he looked at it and he really liked it. And then he passed it off to Lev. And then it just built. It just really built from there. Then we got on with Tara. Then then Michael. So, fast forward to the other. Oh, go ahead.
Let me, one quickie, Ellie. Maybe before all of this,
Mm-hmm.
remind me, Tara had Michael Cohen on a
Yeah,
few
like
months
a year
ago.
ago. I think a year ago, and she had really pressed him.
Yeah, and he didn't respond real well to that,
He
right?
did the same thing. He did the same thing
Okay.
where he just like kind of flew off the handle. And so and he's done that one time before where I was in his chat and I wasn't actually saying anything, and I'd been talking about the Ghislaine Maxwell proffer where she was interviewing and she was talking with Todd Blanche and she had named a Jane Doe and she wasn't supposed to and they didn't redact it. And so I had been talking about how that had happened. And so when I popped in his chat, everybody started going, who's the Jane Doe? Who's the Jane Doe? And he kind of flew off the handle at me, but I'd never met him before. I didn't even know him. And I wasn't saying anything in the chat. So there was just this like pile of interactions with him where he's kind of gotten upset about the same thing over and over again. Well, fast forward to like 3 days ago, Lev and Waj had like a late night, chat.
Mm-hmm.
And then which I didn't even realize at the time that they were doing. And then I get a text message from Lev at 2 a.m. going, look at this. and it was Michael Cohen going on a press junket to all the conservative outlets talking about how he was pressured into saying something by Letitia James. And it just got really weird after that. Like it got like I may not have been as suspicious. I tend to be a person who thinks the best of people and that they're doing things for the right reasons or that they can change or but that got really strange because all of a sudden it was like he disappeared and he did what people said he was going to do, which, is if I'm offered an olive branch, if I have a chance to go back, then I'm going to hop on back.
And Ellie, is that your, because that's almost the most logical conclusion one can get to based on what Michael did last week, is that he's dangled something in front of the Trump folks again. He wants a pardon, whatever. And so because the timing of putting that out last week, to me, the timing just was odd.
It was odd, and it was immediately talked about in Trump's Truth Social, which is much closer than I want to be to Trump's Truth Social. I want to stay out of that man's Truth Social.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know Michael. I don't have a personal relationship with Michael, but I always hope that somebody who has seen the worst of the worst or done the worst of the worst, if they flip that around and they do good, they can do great things. And that's what I hoped. I hope for him, but I don't know him personally. And I was telling Waj earlier, when Michael was at the height of his Trumpiness and pre-prison, I wasn't watching a lot of news. I knew what was going on. I did my homework. I voted as an informed voter. But I had like babies and toddlers all around. Like I wasn't watching a lot of live news. And so I didn't see a lot of his interviews. And lately I've gone back and watched a few and he's a tough cookie. Like the way he has treated a lot of female journalists has been pretty inappropriate. And it made me think, like, can a person like that change? I don't know.
I did my last live with him last week. This was prior to him putting out what he put out on Friday. But by then, the Lev was clearly had stuff and information that Michael knew more about Epstein. And come on, Michael, be forthcoming. And I got a lot of shit last week for doing a live with him, but I do have a personal
Yeah.
relationship with Michael, and it would be like if somebody came out tomorrow and said the most horrific things about you, Ellie, I'd say, Hold on a fucking minute." And I'd certainly want to look at
Yeah.
those things before I publicly said, "I'm done with Ellie."
Right.
So I kind of went through that. Um, but I think because it's this thing that's been eating at me and it's probably been eating you. And I love what you
Mhm.
said when you and I had a conversation a few days ago. I'm going to paraphrase.
Mhm.
Like Michael Cohen could be a hero. He could have been a hero, could be
Mhm.
a hero. If he does know all of this shit about Trump and Epstein and these girls, he could be a hero if he came clean. I've
He
thought
chose.
about that a lot.
Yeah. Mhm. If he chose to, like, if I mean, it's a very you don't have to dig very deep to think that a person in his position would know
Yeah.
anything. I mean, if you're in politics during this time period, if you're involved with finance during this period, if you're involved with legal during this period, if you're involved with the media during this period, those were all Epstein's circles. Like, you're not going to
Mhm.
avoid him. It's just impossible to avoid him. And I also know, I've read so many, 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 many of Epstein's emails. I know he was thinking about Donald Trump
Yeah.
all the time. Like,
All the
they were
time.
mad. They were very similar. And so I know that Donald Trump was probably doing the same thing on the other end. Like, they hated each other enough to like think about each other all the time. And
Yeah.
so the likelihood that his name was never brought up, which is what Michael Cohen had originally said to us, is he had never brought up his name in 14 years. I just thought that's impossible. Like, that's just
It's
impossible.
That's just impossible.
Yeah.
And Ellie, now that I look back, as Michael and I developed a relationship and did this weekly show, whenever this issue would come up, Epstein, uh, uh, you know me, I can be out there and damn it, he's either most likely Trump's a pedophile or he's protecting pedophiles.
Right.
Michael has always been very cautious about
Mhm.
what he says about Trump.
He
As
does,
I
he gets
look back
quiet.
now,
Mhm.
yeah, he hasn't wanted to go there or there or there.
Yeah.
Um, and it just makes me think, now look, this world sucks, the world of
Mhm.
political media, and we're all trying to take each other down and all of that shit. I had a relationship with Michael. I will never
Yeah.
take personal shots at him,
Yeah.
period.
Right.
And I hope and pray that he finds his way.
Right.
I love Ellie Leonard. I love Lev Parnas. I think Tara Palmieri's a phenomenal
Yeah.
journalist. And Michael always wanted to take shots at you and Lev
Yeah.
and Tara. And that bothered me. And then Ellie,
Mhm.
like I always said, come on with Ellie, come on with Lev,
Mhm.
and let's talk this through. And Michael
Yeah.
never wanted to do any of that.
And I don't have anything, like, on a personal level. I don't know him enough to have a personal
Right.
issue with him. All I can do is my job, and I think I said this to you before, because I was catching the tail end of that, because we were doing a live while you guys were doing a live.
Yeah.
I caught the tail end, and he was talking about people just wanting to have a breaking news story or a scoop or whatever.
Yes.
And it's just, he doesn't know, and I don't know, again, I don't know if he was talking about me or Tara or someone else, but like, he doesn't know me enough to know that
No.
about me, because I really, really, I don't, despite being on lives, like, I don't really like being the center of attention, especially in journalism, because I think
Yes.
it's a little bit dangerous. And I don't generally do breaking news, because I also think there's enough people that do it. I don't need to add
Yeah.
my extra take on a breaking news story when everybody's already talking about it. So my job is to find details and take longer and do more like of analysis and, like, an in-depth look at things. And that's my joy when it comes to like journalism and writing. And so I'm not looking to like sink somebody. I'm just looking
No.
for the answers that, what everybody's looking for in these stupid files is they want the answers, and they want closure, and they want justice, and they want it to end.
Period. And
Yeah.
Michael would tell me that privately. He'd say, "Joe, I knew nothing about Epstein and Trump. I'll
Yeah.
be vindicated when the files are all out."
Right.
I don't know that will ever happen.
Hmm.
The files will all be
Yeah.
out, but
I
I
think
just,
he's
mm,
I think he's scared, and if you look
yeah,
at this straight across the board, I've talked to a lot of people behind the scenes, And that is a very common thread that however you knew Donald Trump, if you were a
Oh,
survivor or if you were working for him or whatever,
yes.
you can talk about anything. You can talk about Epstein. You can, write a book on it. But the second you bring up Donald Trump, they get real quiet and they just don't talk. And so I asked a survivor once, I said, what is that? Like, why is that? Why does everybody, is it because he's just so innocent in all this? Or is there just is there a fear? Is there like a fear? There's like a
Yeah,
button that he can press. And they said, there's a fear. And that was all they said. And I said, okay, and we're done talking about it. And I think even for someone like Michael, there's a big fear, I'm guessing, because as much as he knows about Donald Trump knows about him. And I'm
exactly.
sure there were
Exactly.
a lot of things, when he talks about this whole Katie Johnson stuff versus the Jane
Yeah,
Doe case and how mixed up that is. It's like, yeah, but let's say it's not the Katie Johnson case. Trump was still sending you out
yeah,
to go find Jane Does in Queens or wherever it was. Like, you shouldn't have been knocking on some girl's door. Like
yeah.
that's sketchy.
That's sketchy. Ellie, I don't know if maybe, yeah, I'm sure you do know enough. The whole Jane Doe, Katie Johnson thing,
Mm-hmm.
like Michael just said, I just knew the Jane Doe. I never knew Katie Johnson.
Right.
Is that an issue? Is that a
It is. I think it's one of those things where he says a little bit more than he needed to say
mm,
because now I'm going to think about it.
okay?
If he wants to delineate that Jane Doe was a different Jane Doe, that's fine. But the Katie Johnson case all occurred during his time with Donald Trump as well. So like if you're looking after this Jane Doe, and I think he also wanted to delineate that she wasn't a Jane Doe. Well, she was. She had
Hmm.
multiple pseudonyms, and one time she was Jane Doe. She started out as Katie Johnson, but her whole tenure, her whole case happened while Michael was Trump's personal lawyer, and it wasn't
Right,
long.
right.
She filed in April of 2016, and she was going to go public. She was going to do a press, you know, and oh, now Lisa Bloom was her lawyer.
Yeah,
And, I
yeah,
give that a lot of credence. Lisa Bloom's
yeah,
not going to pick up a dumb case that doesn't have facts.
yeah.
But she pulled her case, I believe it was 3 days or 2 days before the
Hmm.
election, all of a sudden. And that's also a red flag for me, like that there is something more going on that we're not seeing. And I don't know.
It's really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
much as Michael Cohen knows about Trump, Trump knows as much about him.
Mm-hmm.
And look, again, Michael's my friend.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to ever take shots at him. But it just seems to me, Ellie, that what he did last week is, trying to dangle a foot
So
over there again in Trump camp and pardon me,
mhm.
look at me, pardon me.
It's
I don't
it's a
know.
little cowardice, I think there's a little cowardice.
Well, drill down on that because I don't have any other explanation for that.
Well, I mean, I was trying to think of like if I had been to prison and there was a chance if I said something that I could go back, I'm sure
Yeah,
that's a nightmare. Like I'm sure that's probably his worst case scenario. He's got kids, he's got a wife. I think he's still married, I don't know.
yeah,
But like I'm sure that's terrifying. But also and I think I said this to you before, like let's say a guy like Michael turned over a new leaf and very honestly and very transparently
yeah.
said, look, I'm laying it all out on the table so that we can work together. We all have a common goal. Let's go make this happen. Here's all the stuff that I've done in my life and I may have a consequence for it, but I'm just going to tell you. Um, you know, I don't think he realizes the size of the community that would embrace him if he did that.
Oh my God, Ellie. Yeah,
I don't think and I think because I think he was just, he's constantly, you hear him all the time, like, I'm not going to start talking until I have 1,000 followers in my
yeah,
chat.
yeah,
Like he was just kind of looking for the clicks and all this stuff.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
just
yeah,
thought,
yeah.
if you let go of all that stuff and you're really here for that reason and you're honest, which I just don't think he was. I just don't think he was honest. And that's just my
It's
opinion.
no, Ellie. It's fascinating. I left Trump world on my own.
Mhm.
I decided to do it.
Mhm.
And I took a blowtorch to my career,
Yeah.
but I voluntarily did it.
Right.
The the most honest thing Michael Cohen's ever said to me was, he
Mhm.
said a year or so ago, he said, Joe, I said, Michael, you and I did the same thing. We walked from Trump world. And Michael Cohen shook his head and said, no. You did that on your own. I had to go to jail to do it. I
was
didn't.
forced out.
I was forced out.
Hmm.
You chose to throw away your career. I lost it.
I'm sure his life was a lot better on that side too.
Oh my God,
Yep.
yes.
Yeah.
But it is. But once you make any sort of break, you've just got to
Mhm.
be honest and authentic, and you're all in. This is who I am now.
Yep.
That man's a fascist. I'm going to do everything I can to defeat him
Mhm.
and my former party or whatever it is. And Michael Cohen, if he's got binders of shit on Donald Trump, once you make that step, then, as you said, Ellie, he could be a hero. Here are
Mhm.
all the binders. Here's everything I know.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah. He could name everybody. He could, he probably has saved things that he could use as
Yeah.
evidence. He probably has so much information that he's been deciding which way he was going to go with. Like I don't know where his heart is. I don't know where his mind is, but like I just think that he hasn't shaken it. You know what I mean? That core person that he was when he was fixing things for Donald Trump, he hasn't shaken that yet.
Do You don't know him. You know him a little
Mhm.
bit, but you are a writer. You're a studier of the human
Mhm.
psyche. Ellie, do you think there's a part of him that wants back into that world?
Yeah. Then the Trump world,
Yeah.
I think there's a big part.
My
Yeah.
God, you didn't hesitate. Interesting.
No. No, I think I've always thought that there's more than a 50% chance that if they offer him an olive branch, he's right back there.
But then,
Because
like, that's like anathema to me. Then, like,
yeah.
who are you? I could never do that. Like,
Yeah.
what?
Well, I mean, he wants a pardon. He doesn't want that on his record. That not that I don't
Yeah.
It's not like he's gonna go work a 9 to 5 somewhere and he needs to not
Right.
be a felon, but, like, I think he wants that off his record. I think he wants, the life he had, which was probably quite nice. He wants probably his friends back, that he was with all the time. I can't imagine that it looks as shiny and lovely as it did the first time around because things seem to be falling apart, but I'm sure that he has a lot of nostalgia for his time there, and,
Yeah.
if it was offered back, he'd probably take it.
I think the world of Lev Parnas. I don't know Zev does good work, and I think the
Yeah.
world of Tara. As you with these guys, Ellie, think about it. Do you think Michael does know a lot more about Epstein than he's ever let on?
Yes. Yes, I think he knows a lot more than most of us know about Epstein. I think you know, Trump is not Trump's not quiet. He's a braggart,
Yeah, yeah,
I don't think he feels bad for a lot of the things that he's done. And financially, which I think is the only thing that scares Trump is the financials.
right.
Um, Michael was there for all of that. He was on the deeds and helping him sell the houses to the oligarchs in Palm Beach, and he's like president or vice president of his pageants, and like he was right there with all that stuff. And you know if as much stuff was going on there as it seems was going on there, it'd be really hard to not notice any of it. He was his guy for 14 years.
You're a fiction writer at heart, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
So in this novel of his life, Michael Cohen's life,
Yeah.
Ellie, play it out for me. What happens to Michael?
Oh man, I was
And
there's all these like.
I know this is all guesswork, and you're a
Yeah, I know. I
novelist, but
it's what is it? Icarus,
yeah,
You think of
yeah,
Icarus like
yeah,
flying too close to the sun. I think he's taking a very big risk going back with the Trump team because I think that it is failing. I
yeah,
think that there are going to be, depending on how the next year looks, I think there's going to be a lot of people who are investigated and
yeah.
potentially have consequences. And he's stepping back into that fire, hoping that all of his consequences that he's already had go away. And I think he's putting himself at greater risk by doing that.
I uh, I hope and pray that he finds his way
Mhm.
and finds and is honest with himself and can
Yeah.
be clean and be and salvage something. I pray for
Yeah.
that.
Can I
Ellie,
ask you? I was going
two.
to ask you
Oh
a
God, yeah,
question. I was gonna ask, how do you feel after this week? Do you feel violated? Like he's your friend. Do you feel like he disobeyed or like he violated your trust? Like, how do you feel about that?
It's a great question. So all of this breaks, and right away in this stupid, disloyal world, everybody jumps on his ship and tries to sink him, and they're done, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I could never do that. I would never do that to a friend.
Sure.
Um, but it, Ellie, I got to be honest, and I've had a few private conversations with him over the last 4 days. I I I feel like I he has not been honest with me.
Mhm.
I told him a week ago, if we find out that you know more about Epstein than you're letting on, I'm done with you. And he looked me
Yep.
in the eyes and said, no, no, no.
Yep.
So I do feel like, and it makes me sad, not angry.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that says, Ellie. It makes me
Yeah.
sad.
Well,
But I do feel like he hasn't been honest with me. And I was one of the few people who hung with him these last 4 or 5 or
mm-hmm.
6 days. So that makes me sad. Yeah.
Yeah. I went back and I watched your live with him from what your
I
last one.
almost didn't wanna do it. I felt
I
like
know.
yeah.
Yeah, I went back and watched it, and I thought it was interesting that at least the first portion of it, it appeared that he was reading from a script. He
He
didn't actually, he wasn't actually speaking from the heart, and I thought that was very interesting.
very telling, and
Yeah,
he does that often.
yeah,
Uh, again, we're very different, he and I got a kick out of him in certain and if he had been like and he really left Trump world and he declared war on Trump, my God, what a
yeah,
checkered past, and he's lied under oath, and he's
yeah,
clearly a liar. Michael Cohen is, but my God, give him a shot here.
yeah.
There was part of me that always felt that way with him,
Mhm.
even though I put up with his New York
Yeah.
bluster and all that
I
shit.
know, trust me, I know what that's
Oh, right,
like.
Ellie. Um, Two Epstein questions, just
Yeah,
broader.
sure.
Where does the whole Epstein story go?
That's a great question because it's got so many little feelers out in the world. There's so much to do. There's the whole case with like JP Morgan and all the money, which is I would have been swept under the rug except for the
Yeah,
US Virgin Islands, like took them to
yeah.
trial on it, and that is highly interesting. I think we're gonna see a lot of information. I think the most information I've gotten is out of the personal emails that he had
Mhm,
with like Steve Bannon
mhm.
and Larry Summers and
Yeah,
all these people that you think are kind of hold not that I held Steve Bannon in high esteem, but people who have,
yeah.
highly academic jobs like Larry Summers and you start to hear these emails of them just being totally personal and kind of
Right,
bro
right,
and you
right.
start to realize, how many people that you thought were just there in proximity were actual actors in
Mhm,
this
mhm.
case. I really, really hope we get some subpoenas. They've been
Yeah,
dangling them. Leslie
mhm.
Wexner is a huge subpoena, but he's a
Yes,
very, very old man. I don't know
yeah,
what his, cognitive state is. And I think
mhm.
it's pretty crappy that they waited, 20,
Yeah,
30 years to subpoena him. I think a big piece of this puzzle, but while we're all waiting for the DOJ to do the right thing, a big piece of the puzzle is the Epstein estate. I think there
yes.
is more probably in that estate than there is in the DOJ, and we
Uh,
don't have to work as hard to get it. So I think we should fight to get those files from the DOJ, but I think we should focus energy on that estate and just cleaning it out because I think there's a lot there.
Last Epstein question. What
Sure.
most interests you moving forward, and what, if
Mm.
anything, are you gonna focus on Epstein related?
Um, that's a good question. I really I like to tell people's personal stories because I think we
Mm,
just look at it as like with a broad brush. There's
yeah,
this many survivors, there's this much, scandal. I really like to look at individual stories of individual people, which you can't do with, upwards of 1,000 women.
right, right.
Um, I would like to, if we can, really delineate between which women were actual perpetrators and which were not. I've heard stories of people like Nadia Marchinkova, who
Hmm.
she was given immunity in Florida as one of his co-conspirators, but she was bought from her parents when she was 15 years old and
Wow.
taken over to, I
Yeah.
mean, she's a
Yeah.
classic story, and I have heard from other survivors that she is absolutely not somebody who should need a pardon. So I really like to focus on those individual stories. I would love also like to like rip open the Dalton School and
Yeah.
possibly Harvard and like
Yeah.
just lay it all out, because I think so much was hidden behind private school money and all the secret stuff that happened there.
Could that ever be done?
I have a spreadsheet with all the graduates from like 4 years.
Cool.
So I mean, if they wanna like write me back, maybe. But I also think there's weird stuff there, because when first Epstein gets this job that he's not
Yeah.
qualified for, right? He's
Yeah.
teaching math and science at a private school that now costs 70,000 a year to go to kindergarten. So it's like a very nice high school, or very nice school.
Yeah.
Um, but when he left there and he was immediately offered a job at Bear Stearns, he was also offered a job at the New York Times by Heinz Sulzberger. And it's like, why is everybody trying to hire this guy with no skills and no degree? It's just, there's something very,
Wow.
very weird that went on there. And then later on, like this year, I got in a big stink with the New York Times, who I've subcontracted with for a decade, because they invited Ehud Barak to come speak, and
Yeah.
he's a big player in these files.
Yep.
And then I realized, well, the Sulzbergers are still running the New York Times, and they're the people who tried to hire him back in the 70s. So there's just like all this corruption that I'd love to dig into, and it just feels like such a giant mountain, but there's a lot there.
Ellie, that's fascinating, because I
Yeah.
don't know that I've read the book about how Epstein ever became a thing. How did he ever make so much
Right.
money? Why did people hire him in the beginning? Where did he come from? Like
Million
that
dollar
whole
question.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, uh, Two final things, and then I'm going to let
Sure.
you go.
Okay.
Everybody listening, love this woman. Follow her, subscribe to her.
Thank
Follow
you.
and subscribe to Ellie Leonard. And if you are an Ellie Leonard subscriber and you like the fact that I haven't shaved, feel free to subscribe to me.
Yes.
Follow and subscribe to Ellie Leonard. Ellie,
Yeah.
you in 20 minutes at 8 o'clock tonight, give us a little tease. You are going to break some Sasha Riley findings. Explain
Yes.
what
Yes.
this is.
This has been a story that became, like wildfire probably about a week
Mhm.
and a half ago. I had some, not inside information. I've known about this story longer than it caught up.
In a
And
nutshell, describe for people what the story is.
so this is a veteran who was born in 1973, and he has claimed, his name is Sasha Barros, actually. Riley
Yeah.
is, there's different last names, but he claimed that there was some sort of child trafficking farm in Oklahoma where Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein were not only, sexually abusing boys and girls, but they were killing them. There's a lot of very, very heavy details. There's a lot of like his description of getting away, because he was the only one that survived, was he put, trigger warning, sorry guys, he put a condom on a tent stake and shoved it up Trump's ass. That
Mhm.
was his description of how he escaped. I take all survivor stories from the get-go. I'm always a platform for people to tell their stories, but I
Yeah.
do my homework. And so because I've known about this story for a little bit, and because it became, in the
Huge.
news,
Yeah.
yeah, it became huge. A lot of us, not just me, but a lot of us behind the scenes in journalism and the survivors too, have been researching this, so that if it's true,
Mhm.
if the findings are able to be corroborated, then it absolutely needs a platform. But if it's not, and they cannot be corroborated, so that it
Yeah.
doesn't take away from survivors' stories, because we don't want to pull anything away from the survivors. So I and a few others have been doing our research. But I wrote this by myself. I don't want to name anybody else, but I wrote a piece that is just my findings, and they're just mine. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not going to force anybody to agree, or come to a conclusion based on what I wrote, but I just want people to see the information that I found, how I found it, what resources I used, and then they can make their own, assumptions from that.
Very, very cool. And you're putting this out at 8 tonight?
8:00, and I'm going to be talking to Zev at 8 as well, so we'll kind of go over
Oh
some of
my
it.
God, Ellie. Then so
Yeah.
and this is important stuff, guys, because so many people have just, as we do in this world, just bought the whole Sasha Riley thing without figuring out if it's true. Ellie's doing some great work, and she's putting out sort of the information on it
Yeah.
at 8:00 tonight.
Yeah.
So check that out, everybody. Hey, Ellie, one of our listeners just asked me quickly, how is your mental health? And I think that's a great question because
I
you
get
have
that
4
question
kids.
a lot. I do
So
get
give
that
me-
question a lot.
Always. Give me your 30-second answer.
Okay, so I get up in the morning and I go for a long run. And then I
Yes.
come home and I drink a lot of coffee. My mental health is good. I have worked in transcription. That's my side hustle for many, many years. I did the Weinstein case. I did the Woody Allen stuff. I've done a lot of legal, this is not my first rodeo. It's a big
Mhm.
story, but it's not my first rodeo. And fortunately, I can separate what I work on and my home life. I can shut it down. I sleep well at night and be with my kids. So I think I'm very, very, very blessed and lucky to not be someone who was sexually assaulted as a child. So I'm not
Amen.
triggered by the information. And I feel like it's a responsibility for me because of that I can work on this stuff for the people who can't. And so, yeah.
Oh, I'm just going to shout because I'm going to let you get the hell out of here. Ellie Leonard, everybody.
Thank
She
you, guys.
rocks. Ellie, God bless.
Bye,
Thank
guys.
you.
Have a good night, Joe.
Thanks. You too.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. Remember to listen, follow, and share The Social Contract with Joe Walsh on Apple, Spotify. Plus, don't forget to subscribe to The Social Contract on Substack. This has been The Social Contract with Joe Walsh.